Hey guys, I'm Alex,
And I'm Drew.
and today on the Two Man Comic Book Club podcast, we're taking a look at 10, 11, 12, Mr. Miracle, Tom King, Mitch Gerads. We're wrapping up the story. Let's go.
So this is going to be an episode of Alex reminds Drew what he read like 3 weeks ago.
To be fair, I had to go hang out at PJ's this morning and thumb through them again but I had the time. You had a busier morning than I did.
I had my jazz piano lesson.
Jazz piano, tickling the ivories.
Yes, though mine are just plastic.
This is hilarious. When I was texting you about tickling the ivories, I accidentally typed tickling the ovaries, which is way different than tickling the ivories.
Very different.
Anyway, I digress. There's 3 issues left in this series. We've been enjoying it. It's a good time. The first 2, 10 and 11, are going to be wrapped up pretty similar to how we did 7, 8, and 9. Kind of bam, bam, bam. Thank you, ma'am. 12. 12 is a heavy comic book to wrap your head around. If you enjoy having to think about what you just experienced after consuming a form of media, you're going to enjoy this.
I'm out. I'm just kidding.
If you don't like that, and there are people that are like, what happened? Just make it easy for me. I appreciate like having to think about something, and like it just lets me kind of linger in the world, right? I appreciate that, but I do accept that there are those that just don't like that sort of storytelling. So we're going to do our best to walk through it. As always, I'm going to try to not repeat myself over and over, but the best way to experience this is to read it. It's on DC, Infinite Universe, whatever comic book app. Read it, buy the floppy, buy the floppies, and then buy the trade, or whatever version you want to consume this in. I'd be surprised if they don't make some or maybe I don't know if this exists, some special deluxe edition with concept art, and I would own something like that. It's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. I really like what we're going to talk about. We're going to do our best to help conceptualize in your brain like what actually happens at the end of this story, because it was unexpected for me, and I'm still like making sure that myself understands like what happened for sure. So anyway, before we get into all that, Drew, what you been reading, yo?
Not a whole lot, Alex. Yeah.
Thank you for watching the Two Man Comic Book podcast.
And we're done.
Yeah.
No, I don't know what the last thing I read was. I've been doing a lot of novel reading. I finished that.
It's novel.
That Insurance Adjusters in Space book. It was all right. And I think it was actually the beginning of a series, but I'm not going to continue. And even I've mentioned it 3 or 4 times now, and I still couldn't tell you what it was called. And I started reading another novel recently. I think it's like from the 70s, about a family that just goes on a trip, and they're driving from LA to Vegas in an RV, and they pick up a hitchhiker who turns out to be somebody who's like responsible for keeping his existence intact. And the threads of reality have started unraveling, and now they're intertwined.
You would think that guy would have a car.
Yeah. Well, she's like 5,000 years old, and she just,
forgive me for assuming.
That's right. She just travels slowly, and like, I don't know. It's weird. I'm enjoying it. It's an interesting story. But there is one kind of comic thing that I read. I mean, I'm going to hand this off to Alex, but it's called The Mountains of Madness. I got this graphic novel.
This art looks cool.
Yeah. I can't remember how I stumbled upon it.
Based on the novel by H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah. And it's just this, I think it's just one guy. What was his name?
Adam Fida, F-Y-D-A.
Yeah. It's just an interesting story. I wish it was a little bit longer, because it's just like a one and done graphic novel as far as I can tell. But they have a ton of stuff. So like,
I really like this art.
The art's nice. Yeah. And I mean, I read it in one sitting, and it was good. It did some stuff I didn't expect. So I don't know if this like totally follows the H.P. Lovecraft story, or if they like do their own spin on it.
Right.
Because I haven't read the original. But basically, that's what I've been reading, Alex.
I'm thumbing through here to not get spoiled, but I just want to see more. Like some of this art, I would like hang up on my wall.
Yeah, absolutely.
It looks really good.
And I don't remember if since we recorded last, if I've done any more of my DC reading. Mm-hmm. Like I think last time we recorded, I was like, I'm like 4 or 5 issues from being caught up, and now it's been like a month, so I'm probably like 8 issues from being caught up now.
Has it been that long since we recorded?
Well, I don't maybe that long since I actually had something that I read. That's what I mean. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Mountains of Madness, interesting. They are available through Blue Fox Comics online.
Mm-hmm.
You just
Did you buy it digital?
I bought it as a PDF, and they emailed it to me. Cool. So anyway, they've got a bunch of stuff, a lot of horror inspired stuff. Alex, what you been reading, yo?
I've actually picked up the pace on mine, so I've been the one thing I've been slacking on also was, I've been trying to stay on top of X-Men books, and the last few weeks I've not done a good job, but I have been reading. So, reading more of the Immortal Hulk series, which I'm really enjoying, but I started listening. So some of you, if you listen to this, you probably listen to My Marvelous Year, and then you'd be aware that they do a spin-off podcast of that called My Ultimate Year. So My Marvelous Year is these 2 guys, one of them that created the Comic Book Herald. They go through and they give you like the selects, and you read along with them. It's a comic book reading club, kind of like what we're doing here. But they give you the selects from the inception of Marvel Comics all the way to the present. And they're still going on it. They haven't finished. They're in the 90s right now. But they give you like 10 comics for every year, and they do 1 year per episode. So they take you all the way, and you get like a really nice read of the inception of Marvel Comics. So it's a good way to get like a lay of the land. Free Putin.
Kicking off the feet.
Yeah,
living off the fat of the land.
Isn't there a lay of the land somewhere in
there?
There
is. Well, I don't know if it's in there, but I mean, I know the lay of the land is.
Gotcha. Anyway,
sorry to
spun off.
Ruin it.
Yeah, people are like, "What are these 2 guys doing?" Anyway,
go back a few episodes and listen to me talk about the Tom Sawyer movie musical, live action.
Yeah, they do that with the Marvel Universe, but now they're doing one with the Ultimate Universe, which started in the year 2000, and I started listening to that podcast.
In the year 2000.
Just going to have you live backtrack everything we do.
In the year 2000.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If you're still listening.
Yeah. Then you're our kind of people. You should join our Discord.
Yeah.
QR code to the link right here if you're watching the YouTube, and links to join the Discord in the show notes if you're listening to the podcast.
Join us. It's a hoot. Anyway, so I've started reading The Ultimate Universe. Starts in 2000, which was kind of Marvel's excuse to do a soft reboot without actually ditching everything that they were, feeling good about at the time. Even though the 90s was a really weird and arguably very low time for comics. It was like a bad time for Marvel specifically. Anyway, so I've read like 20-ish issues of Ultimate Spider-Man. I've been reading Ultimate Marvel Team Up, which kind of has Spider-Man teaming up with several different characters. And I think up next I'm due to read some Ultimate Daredevil and Elektra books. They're good. They're like surprisingly follow a lot of the... Not follow, are responsible for, I think, a lot of the storylines that we saw in the like early Raimi books, Raimi movies, like Spider-Man stuff. And even... I think if I'm getting into it and I'm learning, I've listened a little bit ahead on My Ultimate Year, I think it's going to be like, oh, they're kind of taking this mold of the Avengers. The MCU might be more inspired by the Ultimate Universe than I was previously aware of, so I'm excited to see what connections they make there.
I'm going to butt in real quick.
Yeah.
You just reminded me of something. I haven't read a lot of comics, but I have consumed a lot of comics media. Recently, I just finished the Netflix Marvel series. I'm all the way done with those.
Yeah.
I wasn't as excited about any of the endings of any of those series. But there was some good stuff in there.
Right.
Like, I wasn't a fan of how they left off Luke Cage, but that's just a personal thing. Iron Fist, I was like, okay, I would watch another season of that.
Right.
I mean, I would watch another season of all of them. Daredevil, It was an okay ending. Yeah. I totally zoned out at the end of the Jessica Jones series. Punisher, I enjoyed that.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, so I finished that, and I actually moved on to something that is a DC property, I think, Lucifer.
Oh, yeah.
Because Lucifer showed up in the Arrowverse's crossover, the Crisis on Infinite Earths. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to watch this. And it's just easy just to finally watch one thing and just let it play instead of jumping around. So yeah, I have been consuming comics media, just not
comics,
not the actual reading of comics recently.
I still have to watch all of those. I think I'll get back to the rest of my reading list in a second, but I think they Disney, that is, saw the coming acquisition of all those properties and saw that if they just kind of waited a little bit, those contracts for Netflix were going to expire, and they didn't have to. So I haven't seen the end of all those series, but I'm sure that they leave a little bit of open. Like
it's definitely open.
Yeah, I guess that's an ending, but
I mean they all worked.
Right.
It really felt like I'm curious, and I should have looked this up. I'm not sure if they knew that some of these series there it was again, as were going to be canceled at the end, because a few of them were definitely like, oh yeah, they're setting us up for another season.
Right.
But the last few felt more like, all right, let's just do a soft, like what was it? I can't remember. I was going to get all highbrow intellectual on you, but there's that guy with the poem, not with a bang, but with a whimper.
Yeah.
Like I felt like that's kind of how the T.S. Eliot, I think. That's how the Netflix Marvel continuity finished, in my opinion, with a whimper.
And I think they're hoping to bring in a lot of those characters.
I need them to.
Yeah.
Because I loved all of those characters as the characters. It was just like the ending that I wasn't crazy about. I need to see those characters interacting with the MCU.
Yeah.
Like I need oxygen.
Yeah. Speaking of the possibility of that happening, we're going to be doing a reaction episode to the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer right after we record this one, and we might mess around and double drop
and talk some what if
also some
maybe?
What if as well. Those 3 episodes of that are out now. Anyway, wrapping up my reading list, I'm just kind of going through my Marvel Unlimited. That's what I've been reading. I was reading some Patsy Walker, aka Hellcat, which was kind of a far deviation from
relevant to what I was experiencing.
Right. Yeah. So not something I normally read, and it's different, but I liked it so far. I started Silk #1, like the recent Silk. I saw America Chavez, Made in the USA. Chavez, not Chavez, you white boy. Also, this is the last thing I'll talk about. I've been reading the issues as they come out of the Heroes Reborn thing on Marvel Unlimited, and it's really cool. Just to get you kind of interested. It's kind of I can't decide yet if it's like a what if story or like another universe, or if it's the 616 and something bad's happened and everything's changed. But we open up and the Avengers are not the Avengers. There is a Squadron Supreme of America, which has taken its place, and Hyperion is leading that team. And a lot of other Avengers or other heroes or villains have swapped roles. I think Magneto's running around doing the Charles Xavier thing. There's a whole bunch of stuff I don't know, but only one person remembers the world as it was, which makes me think it was like a 616 thing, and it's Blade, of all people.
Oh, yeah.
And he's somehow remembers, and he's trying to figure out what's going on. It's really cool. There's some stories that go way back. There's also a fun Peter Parker and the Amazing Shutterbug. It's he doesn't get bit by the spider, and he's still just taking photos. It's cool. There's several of them, 5 or 6 in that whole series that all tie together on Marvel Unlimited that you guys should check out if you're interested in something like that. But that is it for me. I mean, that is a lot of comic books, but...
Did you know that Blade was the first rated R movie I ever saw in theaters?
Really?
Whenever I was in 8th grade.
I just rewatched Blade 3 nights ago because I was like, oh yeah, Blade exists. And then I saw a YouTube video stating in a way, Blade's responsible for the current format of modern superhero films. It came out before Raimi Spider-Man, before the X-Men, and it's so different than the superhero movies that came before it.
I never even knew he was Marvel or a superhero. I just thought it was a vampire movie.
Right.
So.
And he's like a D-list character. His first appearance and several other appearances are in like a Dracula book as like a monster hunter, but he looks nothing like he's portrayed. And they started portraying him in like, the leather jackets and stuff after the Blade movie. But before, he had like a green button-up, a headband, a big afro, and bell-bottoms. Like, did not look, and it was the 70s, of course. Like, so way different, but he is going to be recast by Mahershala Ali, I think is how you say his name, in the MCU. So I'm super excited about that. But the movie holds up well enough. It was like mid-90s CGI, so when aliens are exploding or there's blood, it looks like an old video game. But I don't know. Wesley Snipes is cool.
Yeah.
It's a cool story. Anything else? How are we doing on time? We got a little time. Maybe we can get through one of them.
I think so.
Yeah. Cool.
So since I'm probably going to be useless for the majority of the next, I might give a quick recap of where we came from.
Please.
We're jumping on to issue 7. Wait, no, that's 7. This is 10. 10 of Mr. Miracle. Mm-hmm. And where we left off, they had just finished kind of like a peace conference in Apocalypse.
Yeah.
And
trying to negotiate the end of the war.
Yeah, days and days of conversations. And finally, they had a meeting, and the second in command was like, all right, look, he's shot down all of your ideas, but he has come back, and he's willing to do this and this and this and this and this, and all this amazing stuff, like into hostilities, pulling troops back, letting you check out Apocalypse and everything, if Mr. Miracle and Barda hand over their child.
Yep. And let him be raised by
Darkseid in Apocalypse. And then,
which is exactly what happened to Scott Free, Mr. Miracle.
So I'd forgotten that whenever I went through to look through things, and it took me a second. So in case you're in that same boat, I just wanted to let you know. And now we move to episode 10. Issue 10.
So we're looking at issue 10. I'm going to give the credits of this first one, and they'll kind of stand true to the end of this series. But Mr. Miracle 10 through... well, really all of them, written by Tom King, pencils, inks, colors, and the variant cover by Mitch Gerads. Clayton Cowles did the letters, and Nick Derington did the cover. And then, of course, Brittany Holzherr was the associate editor, Jamie S. Rich is the editor, and Mr. Miracle was created by Jack the King Kirby. So, issue 9, they get basically, here's our demands. You give us your firstborn son, and then you'll win the war. We'll stop everything. 10... is a direct response to issue 9. Cool. So again, I feel like we're going to end up having a lot to say about 12, so I'm going to get through 10 and 11 so we can get to that in the next chapter. So the weight of what they're asking to do, so you got to think about Mr. Miracle is the High Father now. Big Barda is obviously like a commander in his army, and they're dealing with this, and their people are dying, they're losing. It's getting out of hand, and then they get offered a solution, while extreme and shocking to hear, is an actual solution for them to end this war now. And being as a result of something similar, Scott was given to Darkseid to maintain peace, and he's kind of had some mental stability issues as far as reasoning. He's actually considering this, we kind of find out, and struggling with what it means, the fact that he's even considering it, that he even thought, should I? Yeah. That even his subconscious was playing with the idea, even though he knows no, why would I do that? But anyway, let's get into the comic book. So they get home, and this is just them dealing with more human life, even as gods, while they're kind of dealing with what's, the ball's in our court. We got to make a move now. So we first see him out with Booster Gold and Blue Beetle, and they're just having some drinks, and they're they've been drinking. All you see is the 9-panel layout with the whiskey glass getting more and more empty as it goes down, and they make some funny jokes about Mr. Miracle, Blue Beetle, and Booster Gold becoming a superhero team and naming the team Blue and Gold and Red and Green and Yellow. And it's just kind of this funny thing. And then we see them on the sidewalk. There's a funny reference to them picking up a Boon tube to get home because they've been drinking. And I laughed at this because I think everybody who's ever taken an Uber or a Lyft has experienced this before. He's holding his mother box, And he's like, the boom tube says it'll be here in 3 minutes. And then they talk a little bit. He's like, wait a minute, a boom tube now says 4 minutes. You know, it's just a funny, like, oh yeah, I've experienced that thing before.
I haven't.
You not ridden an Uber
I don't
before?
think I've ever Ubered.
Wow.
I mean, if I did, it was like with some people.
And they did it?
So yeah. I mean, I think I've only even ridden in a taxi cab like 2 or 3 times.
Wow.
When I was in Chicago.
Try, you meet some interesting people. It's nice when you go to another city. They're your first interaction with the local, and they tell you all the spots, hopefully. Anyway, so they get home, and he lays down in bed, and he's just kind of making some jokes about everything they were doing, and they're talking about how Jake's going to wake up in a few hours. And then you get like the first kind of like heavy scene. They're planning for little Jake's 1-year birthday, and Scott's in the shower. He's cleaning up, and you just see the bubbles of Barda talking off screen, and she's just talking about prep for the party and why they're celebrating this, and she's gonna invite the Furies and all this stuff. And you just see Scott slowly start to like sit down and like hold himself and just cry in the shower, because he's like, he's it now. You know, the buck stops with him for New Genesis. What is he gonna do? He has an option that is terrible for him personally, but would stop all this suffering, and this is the first time we see him feeling the weight of that sort of thing. So he goes in, and there's a funny scene of him having to buy a birthday cake for his son, and he has like a true struggle deciding just when the cake needs to be ready, and the very annoyed attendant is like, it's Friday at noon, how's that sound? He's like, sure, that sounds great. Anyway, we get to this another moment where we often see Barda and Scott sitting on the couch, they're hanging out, and he finally like brings up the war. Doesn't even bring up the offer they were made, but just the notion of him bringing up the war, you feel the tension of like they've been avoiding talking about this, because that conversation of the war that they're fighting is going to lead to the offer they were made. And Barda, who has just put down the baby, punches the wall, the Mr. Miracle cover on the back, and shatters it, and then wakes the baby up. Yeah. And it's just kind of like a moment of frustration from their war life on New Genesis, and then just parenting life. And you get that parallel all the way through this. So going through here, Scott's driving. He's trying to get some more information on the war. And he goes and he asks the question of, what would you do to this most unexpected person? And it's just this cashier at he's getting party supplies.
It's a party store, I think. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, they've decided it's a Batman theme because their son loves Batman, not Mr. Miracle, who's a new god.
It's all right.
Yeah. I mean, who doesn't love Batman? Yeah. Maybe 32, I should do a Batman-themed birthday party.
Do it.
And dress up. Everybody has to dress up as a character from Batman.
Do it.
I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Be thinking about who you would dress up as. Anyway, the guy like does the thing.
I was just thinking everybody shows up as Batman. That'd be funny.
Yeah.
Everybody's just walking around like, I'm Batman.
Yeah.
Just talking to each other. Just everybody's talking like this.
Right. I hope there's one Robin, and it'll probably be me. Yeah.
You're Robin at your own birthday party.
Yeah. Anyway, the guy does the classic.
Not that Robin's not cool.
Well,
Robin's awesome.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's not Batman.
He's not Batman.
Right. At least not the running, long time Batman.
Yeah.
Anyway, the guy asked the funny thing that we all have to deal with. Like, this is just another, even if slightly funny and like non-serious, it's the dreaded, do you have a rewards membership, or do you have a Old Navy credit card, or whatever it is. It's like you have to tell somebody no. But anyway, he asks him, like, I'm just going to read some of this. Scott looks at this guy who he doesn't know and says, can I ask you something? The guy's like thinking he's going to ask him about the benefits of the card, so he starts running it off. And he's like, there's this war I'm losing. Billions are going to die. I can stop it, even like win it really, but I have to surrender my only son. And the guy's like, okay. And Scott's like, I don't know what to do. What should I do? So this massive question, he just asked this random schmuck that's selling party supplies. But the guy gives kind of a more thoughtful answer than you'd expect. I'm going to read some of that. He's like, yeah, that's tough. Damn. I guess the way I look at it is that it's like life needs more happiness. The whole point of it all is to maximize happiness for the rest of people. Not like quick pleasure or whatever, but deep, meaningful bliss. It's almost math, or like an equation, that like explains everything, like a life equation. We get a little wink at the anti-life equation that we've been hearing about so much. He says, so you just put your decisions into the equation and you see what happens. So if it increases happiness for most people to the end of the war, go for it. Like if the happiness you lose for the kid is less than all the people not dying, then you do what you have to do, you know? So he gives this very objective, this doesn't really affect me answer, which you kind of get the sense that like he's already been thinking like, oh, this is what the objective king of New Genesis would do, just like his father did to him. And eventually we'll see, like after he leaves the place, we see one more of him doing a stunt just in one page. We see him bringing it up to Barda while they're swinging Jakey at the park, and he basically says the same thing, like, hey, we turned out all right, you know, like, sure, we were tortured and all this stuff, but here we are, we got a family, we're happy, right? And Barda's like, no, this is not normal. This is not a thing that people need to deal with, and we should definitely not take our son, the one thing about us that has not had to experience such terrible things, and force that down him too. And there's more detail to it. She breaks down and gets, in my opinion, understandably mad, and just isn't going to have it. You know, she's not dealing with it. So go home. There's a bit with Funky. That's his name, right? Funky?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. They're hanging up Batman banners and stuff, partying, and then like he has this like little illustration comic book that he and Jakey put together. And getting to the end of this, we end up back on the couch with Scott and Barda, and Scott basically is like, I've figured out what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring Jacob to Darkseid, and then I'm just going to kill my father instead. And Barda very casually is like, all right, I'll come with you. And then just the final acknowledgement that Scott isn't going to let their son go is enough for her to drop all of the mad, and then they do things that married people do. And then the comic's over.
You mean they fall asleep watching Netflix together?
That's what it looked like in the comic.
Cool.
Yeah. So, yeah, just to sum up, issue 10, direct response to issue 9 of Scott dealing with this massive question, what should he do? Because it's not in his mind, it's not as simple as just say no matter what, when that's a legitimate way that he could win this war, and it's his responsibility to try to do so. And now the alternative is he's going to trick and escape this thing. You know, that's what he does. He escapes this impossible option, and he's going to try to kill Darkseid, which is the same thing as, if you're more familiar with Marvel, saying you're just going to kill Thanos. Oh, also, he kind of raised you. Kind of. And then we go to issue 11. How are we doing on time?
Yeah. We need to take a break.
We'll be right back. Before we get started on issue 11, which in many ways you'll find out is kind of a final issue, and I would say 12 acts a little more as a prologue, just a little foreshadowing. DC, is it DC Ultimate Universe? Is that what this app's called?
DC Universe Infinite.
Infinite. This is a terrible name for an app. I'm just going to say that. I'm never going to get it right.
Yeah.
But one thing that they do get right, not including their name, is they add a little variant cover to most of the issues just so you can see some of the variants. I wish Marvel Unlimited did that. They might do it some, but nowhere near as much as DC does. There's this cool variant of, you get like a half not silhouette, but like half of Darkseid is in the panel on a white backdrop, and he's all glitched out, kind of like we've seen throughout the series, and little Jacob Free is kind of reaching up to hold his finger. And it's just so striking against the background, but it's also cool because you are forced to think about, like, oh yeah, little Jacob Free is holding his grandfather's hand right there, even if it's kind of a skewed way that happened. But anyway, I just really like the art there. Drew, do you want to talk through some of the beginning of this?
I'll try.
Yeah. I'll interject here, but I think some of this you were cracking me up talking about the veggie tray.
Yeah, so we open with a veggie tray.
Yeah, naturally.
You know them, you love them. I guess they've just decided that to hand off baby Jacob to Darkseid, they should probably bring a veggie tray.
Yeah.
And I think they even make a comment like, never underestimate the power of a veggie tray.
Yeah, they're kind of packing up at home before they leave to Apocalypse.
They grab the little Batman stuffed. I've always called them stuffed animals, but that's not.
Just a little stuffed doll.
Yeah. Like, don't forget the Batman. He'll freak out.
Mm-hmm.
And then they boom tube out of there. Little Jacob in a stroller. And as soon as they land at Apocalypse, it looks like one of the Furies comes out and is cheering and hugs Barda, and the baby's there. And Mr. Miracle's like, we got a veggie tray.
Yeah, they're checking her for weapons, right? Like, they're like, yeah, sorry, I missed you, but I got to make sure you don't have any weapons, dark side and all. And then they make a passing comment like something could actually hurt him.
And then the greatest panel.
Yeah.
Possibly the greatest page of comics in the history of comics.
Wow, that's a bold claim.
And also 99% sure will be the thumbnail for this video if you're watching on YouTube.
You probably already saw it.
The veggie tray. Darkseid eating carrots off the veggie tray. Not just one, but two. It's like a full page of Darkseid enjoying the veggie tray.
Enjoying a veggie tray. I think he only says like 2 words in this whole comic.
He said more the one where he killed Orion.
Right.
Like they actually had kind of a conversation. But
here you just get the crunch onomatopoeia of him. And of course he's dipping it in ranch. It's just a funny juxtaposition of like this terrifying new god eating some carrots with some ranch during a transaction of war.
Yeah.
It's just a
pretty sinister one.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just a kind of a moment to stop and, based on thoughts I have earlier, will even make more sense, I think.
And there's this guy standing next to him.
It's Desaad.
Have you come to kill your Lord God? And Mr. Miracle's like, no, Uncle Desaad. Like, we're not. Like I said, we're here to end the war. Accept his offer, the kid for peace. And he's like, you're lying.
Yeah.
But, they go on a little bit, banter and stuff like that. And eventually they hand the kid over to Darkseid. And little baby Jacob's grabbing Darkseid's nose.
Yeah. And he's saying, nah. And they have this, like, in the moment argument of, like, if he's actually saying nose. Like, Scott's like, yeah, that's how he says nose. And she's like, he's one. He's just making noises. It's a good, funny moment.
And the gruesome thing, they're like, all right, you brought the kid. Well, we can't, like one of the deals was that in exchange for the kid, they would give Mr. Miracle the anti-life equation. But it's like a thing that is ingrained within Darkseid or whatever. And the only way, like they can't really give the equation over,
right?
But all they can do is ensure that Darkseid's not able to use it. And in a scene that I hated deep in my loins, Darkseid just pulls one of his eyeballs out and hands it over, because apparently if he can't use his omega beams, which require both eyes, he can't use the anti-life equation. I don't quite know how that works, but I'm
Darkseid is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is correct. It's a pretty gnarly scene. Darkseid very casually rips out one of his eyes, and there's about 14 inches of tendon hanging onto it before it has some sweet popping to come off there. But they also announced, like, in the next minutes, all the troops will be withdrawn. The captured shall be returned. Your inspectors will be welcomed in. And, the transaction is essentially complete. And they were like, after he pulls out his eye, Desaad's kind of speaking on behalf of Darkseid this whole time. Darkseid hasn't said a word except for some crunches for some carrots. He's like, I hope this will suffice. Like, this is all we can do. I hope it's going to be satisfactory. And Barda's holding the eyeball and then squishes it in her hand, kind of like, satisfactory, no, but I guess it'll have to do. And we see them holding on to the kid, and basically Scott asks if he can just say bye. Like, and there's just kind of really touching, sad moment of Scott, like, referencing, like, hey, Jakey, you probably won't remember what I'm saying. I don't remember what my dad said when he gave me away. But I do feel like every once in a while when I've been in some tough spots that I've felt the essence of whatever that was that he said, even though I'd probably hate him if I knew what he actually said. And he just says, I just need you to know I love you so much. And he picks him up and gives him a hug. And he's kind of holding him tight, and then he kind of positions him like where he's really holding him. And then he goes, okay, honey, I've got him. And then Barda, who's still holding onto this stroller, says, fantastic. And Desaad goes, excuse me? Standing up next to Darkseid. She rips up the bottom of this stroller, and there's like some electronic cyber laser beam something looking, and you just hear it like it starts charging up. Darkseid stands up. Desaad screams no. And they're like, what are you doing? And she says, boom. And then this explosion of energy with an onomatopoeia boom just explodes out of that. Now, I just assumed that this was like a boom tube type thing being shot at them. I don't know that that's exactly it. I think they kind of explain it as the miracle machine that they extracted during a crisis, and they were testing it out, trying to figure out what to do with it, and they just realized that nothing was strong enough to withstand the energy that it expelled. So she shoots this thing right at Darkseid into his chest and is screaming and basically saying, like, there is no escape from this. We found the thing that can kill you. And it's killing him, and then he puts his hand up and he stops it, and then he stands up, and she was like saying die this whole time. And you get one where she's like die, and Darkseid just walks the beam down, kind of like you saw in Infinity War where he's catching it with the Infinity Gauntlet, gets it close with her and just hits her, and you see another panel, Darkseid is, and he says, yes, I am, which is kind of a fourth wall breaking thing. He's referencing the panel that came before. So Darkseid and Desaad are like, well, Darkseid walks up to Mr. Miracle, Desaad again speaking on behalf of him. I think that's the last that Darkseid speaks in this comic. Desaad's like, you violated your agreement. Because of your violation, we're executing all the prisoners, we're redeploying all the troops. He thinks there's one way to get his eye back, and that would be to replace it with yours, High Father. And Mr. Miracle, holding his kid, looks up, and he's like, F you to Darkseid, just still in the face of all this adversity, hoping that Mr. Miracle can do one last final escape. And it doesn't quite work out that way, and Mr. Miracle is just getting the crap beat out of him by Darkseid. Like, pretty bloody scene, and the baby's sitting there like having to watch, and Desaad's just insulting the entire time. And you get this pretty ominous 9-panel thing where there's a progression of Scott laying there in blood with his baby crying, trying to console his child, and Darkseid's shadow just slowly taking up more and more of the panel. It's pretty gnarly. But then the veggie tray is on the floor. The freaking veggie tray and its importance in this. Yeah. Scott reaches over after Barda pleads for him in this kind of motif we've had through all of this. Scott-free stand, that we saw in issue 1. And he pulls this dagger out of the carrots, which is hilarious because it's like some magical, it's kind of like a Harry Potter pulling the sword of Gryffindor out of the hat.
It's exactly what it was.
It's that sort of thing. Yeah. Like, there's no reason that it should have fit in there, but it did. It's more of a big dagger. It's not exactly a sword, I don't think. But he pulls it out, and he leaps at Darkseid and jams this sword right in his eye. And Darkseid's like screaming. And then in the text, we find out that this is a sword that was just like the one that helped cut the umbilical cord for Jacob Free to be born. And it was made out of Orion. Remember, Darkseid's actual blood son, and then the previous High Father that Mr. Miracle just replaced. And Darkseid falls to his knees, and then face first falls on the ground, and then dagger goes even farther through the back of his head. And that's it. Like, they won. Darkseid's dead.
Yeah.
And they have some funny back and forth about the amount of cussing that they just did in that battle with their son present, and how his first word's actually going to be a curse word. And you think it's over. You think, okay, this is where normal comic books end. Maybe a little 3 weeks later outro just to create some normalcy. There's a whole few other pages and another comic book, ladies and gentlemen. Suddenly, Desaad, who was, again, the guy narrating all this or talking and speaking on behalf of Darkseid, is sitting up where Darkseid was sitting and then pulls off his robes, and it's Metron that we saw earlier, like issue 2 or 3. I can't remember. I just looked it up. I think it was 2. If you recall, and you've been with us the whole time, they were in bed sleeping. Sorry, Siri was interjecting. They were sleeping, Big Mr. Miracle and Big Barda, and what's his name? I always forget it. Metron. I always want to say Megatron. It's not Megatron. That would be a different crossover.
Mm-hmm.
He showed up and he kept saying, "You are not to know the face of God." And he just kept repeating that, and he got zipped away. Tori looked up in that episode, I think, what he was. He's not a new god. He's kind of like a, I don't know how to explain it, like a otherworldly something else. Like he's not a new god. That's all I can say. But anyway, I'm just going to read some of the panel here. So he's basically like saying, "You have slain the devil. You have seen fear, embraced fear, mastered fear. You have seen love, embraced love, and then been mastered by love. You challenged the unchallenged. You dared the trap of death, and you escaped. And now it is time, my son, to look in the face of God and hear your cheers and take your bow, where you are not where it should be, where you should be scot-free." And then you switch to the next page, and there's this full spread of all of the major characters in the DC universe, essentially like a Justice League-esque panel. I don't think there's any villains in here, at least not in the like long-standing villains. I'm sure there's some. And at the center of it is Metron, and all it says on the text is, "There is another world." Now, this took me a little bit. I actually had to do some research and several reads of this to understand what was going on here. But what Metron is talking about here, and it's very specific that he says there is another world. The multiverses in the DC universes are literally different worlds. So like Earth 1 is the main continuity. And he is referencing here, and this is where this comic, and especially issue 12, starts to get super meta and a little bit highbrow. He's basically saying there are other continuities, and what you did might not matter. And I know that sounds kind of like a what? Like you'll have to sit in it. Once we get into issue 12, this is going to make more sense, I hope. But we just see this happen, and the next page is Mr. Miracle staring at Metron, looks over, sees Darkseid dead, stares at Metron again, stares at Barda, stares at his son, who cusses for the first time, and then slowly picks up a carrot and eats it as he stares at Metron one last time, takes a bite. End of issue 11.
Yeah.
I wish I could... This really is going to be something that I think you're going to want to go back and make sure you read several times. And what really helped me was like going and getting some interpretations of what just happened, and then especially issue 12, what we're about to go over, because it is kind of a, I don't know how to say it. I'll say more whenever we get through issue 12. But essentially, Metron came out of the nowhere, was pretending to be Desaad, and basically says, you've escaped this thing, but it might not matter, essentially is what I'm reading from this. So, Drew, do you think I missed anything of importance in that issue? I just want to make sure that I'm not like...
I feel like we got it.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to get through the bulk that I can of issue 12. And it's going to feel like I'm ripping through it, but I feel like we need to, just so that I can explain at least as much as I understand of it. Okay, so another issue. We see Scot-Free doing another escape act, and it looks like this one he doesn't get out of. But we just go to the next panel, and we see him and Barda getting ready for the morning. They're getting out of bed. Scott's already in the shower. He's got this massive beard, so we can kind of tell some time has passed. And he just says, "Good morning." And we see him getting ready in the bathroom, and he's shaving, and he's looking into this mirror, and we see pink text bubbles, and he's talking to somebody, and somebody's just unhappy with where he positioned the mirror. And originally you think it's Barda, but then you're like, why are the text bubbles pink? And if you remember back, or you're a keen eye enough, you would realize that those are the text bubbles of Granny Goodness. So while he's shaving, we see Granny Goodness talking to him, but she's glitched out. And that's going to be an important thing to think about in this episode, and every instance that you've seen that glitch happening throughout this entire series. So she's glitched out, and she's basically saying, "Look at you," while he's shaving, all grown up and so handsome. "How could you do it to me? You see, my boy, this is real. All the rest, the deaths, the war, the wife, the child, this pretend life it's in your head. You're insane. You're making it up to escape from me. You little fool, you had a chance. Metron was a signal. You should have opened your eyes. You should have come back. How could you leave your granny? So we're going to pause right there. We're 6-ish, 7-ish pages into this comic. And according to this conversation he just had with Granny Goodness, everything we just read was a dream. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I immediately was like, oh, dang it. Are we just doing the it was all a dream thing? Like the most worn out, quote unquote, I feel creative by pretending this all didn't happen thing. Like, but there's more to it. Mm-hmm. Cool. So switch panels, and I guess it's important to point out this issue is a bunch of like prologue vignettes of little moments that are captured after everything we saw in issue 11. So this is not like every page is 5 minutes later or even a day later. Some of the like actual time lapses through this. So he's talking to Granny Goodness. She kind of tells him this has all been in your head, but keep in mind she's like in that glitch style art that Mitch Gerads has kind of put very carefully throughout this entire run. And I think after this issue, it's fun to go back and see where all that was implemented and what specific moments he used that in. So, next page. This looks like to be relatively close. This might be a little bit later in the day. Barda's getting ready. She's dressed in her uniform. She's feeding Jakey. And basically they're like, where is Funky? You know, we've got somewhere to be. And just more life stuff. They like to interject the real life of Barda and Scott into this whole thing. And they're standing there getting ready for their boom tube. Funky showed up. She's like, you shaved? He's like, I did. She's like, it looks nice. And he goes, thanks. They boom tube. You see them disappear out of their living room. The boom tube opens up on Apocalypse's end, and out pops Scott and Barda, and they're making out, and she's like straddling him. And Light Ray's there to greet them, and he's like, should we? And they're like, oh, shut up, Light Ray. And he's like, yeah, okay. Like, you know, who am I to tell the king and queen of New Genesis and Apocalypse what to do? So we get another scene of Barda. They got another scheduled. What is this specific, like a battle between the leaders of the army, I guess?
Just a duel. I don't know what.
Yeah, it's kind of like a duel. If you saw Troy, this was a thing I think they actually did in like ancient Greece. They would just send out their best warrior. Instead of just bloodshed everywhere, they'd be like, all right, whoever wins this fight wins. There's a pretty cool fight scene of Brad Pitt as Achilles, Troy taking down these big guys. But anyway, it's that type of thing. So she beats the guy up. He's like honored to fight her and gets all excited. And she's like, let's get this. I've got things to do. Let's get this over with. Beats him up. But anyway, Scott's there. I forget this guy's name, but we saw him.
Forager?
Forager. That sounds right. Scott's sitting there on the ground watching his wife destroy this guy. And Forager's sitting there next to him, who, if you remember, died at the hand of Light Ray, I believe, or Orion, one or the other.
I think it was Light Ray.
I think Light Ray came and killed him because for crimes against the High Father or something. Anyway, we're in Apocalypse, which has definitive parallels with Hell. Mm-hmm. They're fighting. They're sitting there. It's like blood red everywhere. And Forager is sitting there, and he's also depicted in this like real glitchy, distorted way. Mm-hmm. And he basically, I'm just going to read some more of every time this is significant. He says, man, what can I say, man? You're in hell. You killed yourself. You died. You went to hell. You had to escape, and you actually found a way to escape, and you decided not to escape. So you're just in hell now, like forever. And then he makes some allusions to, like, you don't really get it that this devil came after the last one, and after this devil comes another one. Like, there is no escaping this hell that you're in. You killed yourself, you went to hell, and that's the life you're in now. So now suddenly we have two answers and two possibilities of what is actually happening. So we're starting to question what is actually the outcome of Scott Free. Was this all like he never even escaped Apocalypse, and to escape mentally and survive, he just made up this whole story in his head, a la Fight Club style, and this has just all been happening, and he's been projecting this life onto his actual life? Or is the scene from issue 1 where he attempted suicide, was that it, and he actually died, and we're still not done with this comic book yet. We're not even halfway through. Yeah. Cool. So he finishes that conversation in hell, switch pages, and we've progressed even further in time. This time we know that because Bart is pregnant again. Mm-hmm. And this is where we're getting more interjections of just real life. They're sitting there doing the, what's it called? Where you do the scan, not a CAT scan, not a...
it's on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah. Dang it. It's not an x-ray. It's not a CAT scan. It's when you, something gram. Why am I so dumb?
The see-through mama's belly
See-through mama's belly gram to look at baby gram. That's what it's called. And they're kind of panicking because the nurse is having a hard time finding the heartbeat, but they suddenly find it, and they find out they're having a little girl. And there's congratulations, and they make a nice little wink at. They ask, is everything okay? And she's like, yeah, we're going to do some measurements to make sure, but she looks good. If anything, she's a little big. And it's kind of like, it's going to be a little big Barda. Anyway, to the next panel, we see them leaving the hospital. I think this is the hospital they're leaving, where they were just getting the scans done. And we see Orion also in the digital kind of distorted thing. So we kind of, at this point, we're getting like, okay, what is Orion's take going to be on what is actually going on right now? Or even if it's a take, or if he believes this, or what it is. So I'm going to read some of Orion's. He says, Darkseid's gone. I am gone. You are High Father. You have the family of your dreams. You are in heaven. And when you hear that, there's like stark contrast between the white cleanliness of a hospital and the conversation of bringing life into the world. And there's some just parallels versus being in this hell-like battlefield, bringing death and destruction and battle that they were discussing. And then we said more from Orion. They're on this elevator. He says, you killed yourself and went to paradise, tried to escape and found a way, decided to stay. So that's been another theme right here. They keep saying he's escaped this, but he's found a way to stay and not go. So while there's declarations of him all having this in his mind, or he's in hell or he's in heaven, all of them are saying he's decided to stay. Mm-hmm. So again, it's complicating what is actually happening. Where is Scott free? Did he escape? Did he die? Did he ever even escape Granny Goodness? We got some conversations about them picking girl names, not knowing, and then Orion again with his helmet off from this perspective, which is kind of weird because it's the only time you see him without his helmet. He says, I cannot say that I blame you, brother. And we get one more, I'm not your brother, from Mr. Miracle. But Orion says he's disappointed in you. I thought life was supposed to be challenges, the struggle, the moment before the bow. If everything is easy and nice, like how now everything is easy and nice, you might as well be dead. So again, bringing that question, is he dead or is he alive? We move along even farther. This is their little girl, right? Is this like that farther ahead?
No, I think that's somebody in the car next door to them.
Oh, okay. That confused me. Okay, yeah, now I can see the different car. Okay. So they're in rush hour LA traffic where they found themselves before, and there's a little girl waving at them from another car. Just probably recognizes Scott Free from his TV acts or whatever. And they make more arguments about the condo and rearranging it, or if they should move, and then the cliche of having to leave LA and loving LA and all that stuff. Just more, again, life. So they go home. Funky's still playing there. We get some nice winks at comic book greats. He has kind of had a Stan Lee vibe this entire time. Would you say so?
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know the history. I need to go back and read the OG Mr. Miracle books, because when I tweeted at Tom King and Mitch Gerads, Mitch responded back to me and he was like, yeah, we based this off like the original run. So if you've got a good grasp of that, I don't know if Funky's a character in that, but I feel like he might be as relevant as he's been in this book. And maybe there's some inspiration from the time that he actually was created, because Stan Lee and Ditko and Kirby were all kind of like, they were friends despite going back and forth between, well, I guess at this time they might not have been friends, Kirby and Stan Lee. I don't know. There's more to explore there for me. Anyway, they have some back and forth about getting Jake down for a nap, and Scott's like, yeah, I'll do it. I've got him. And he says, da, da, it's super cute. And then he starts singing the Hush Little Baby, Don't Say a Word, the whole song. And walking over to the couch, Jakey goes, Dasa, which is how he says Darkseid. Mm-hmm. And sitting at the edge of the couch is a glitched out eye missing, bloody Darkseid, just sitting there with his hands in his laps very calmly. Scott is unfazed by this, keeps singing, props his feet up on Darkseid's lap with his socks right next to Darkseid's face, who he kind of looks down and then looks forward again and just keeps singing. And that's it. That's the only interaction. We don't get any text or dialogue from Darkseid or thoughts of where Scott Free is, but I think it's probably an implication of more Darkseid is there. Then we get this panel from issue 1. I know we're taking a long route here, but I feel like the more context you get here is going to be helpful. Of the boy sitting in the classroom, the one that said he drew God, and they were talking about nobody's ever seen God or something like that. I can't remember the exact thing, but the context has changed here. So now it says, and the son asked, "What is the fourth world?" And the father said, "The first world is the old world, the world of my parents from which they fled. The second world is the new world which they sought, which they found, where I came to be. The third world is our world, as it is now, in the making, the future being born. And the fourth world," which you all know where the new gods came from, "the fourth world, my child, that is my world, the world I see when I close my eyes." And then the boy says that's drawing, because that was all kind of like a narration. I try to escape. So that's another panel kind of asking, like, the fourth world that they were in New Apocalypse or New Genesis and Apocalypse. This boy that looks very much like Scott Free is talking about it being a world that he sees when he closes his eyes, which means he imagines, and he tries to escape. So adding another layer to what happened to Scott Free. So we see Scott, he goes out to get some hot dogs after some funny banter back and forth with his wife, and there's a little play on a no veggie tray today, Mr. Miracle, which was a nice thing.
Yeah.
He walks out in the rain with his bag of hot dogs, and his father is... Oh, we're close on time. Mm-hmm. I'll be right back, and I'll get this because I don't want to be interrupted into this. We'll be right back. All right, sorry about that. I'm getting a little long-winded on this, but it's necessary for us to get the context of what's going on here. So he went to get the hot dogs, and he's leaving. It's raining, and then suddenly another figure from his past shows up, and it's his father who gave him away. And I'm just going to read some of this context, just to give you context for the character. He says, "You understand now," and just to note, he's all glitched out, just like all the others have been. He says, "You understand now who you are, who I am. As I once did, you faced the anti-life equation. It affected you, warped your world, and you fought against it, almost escaped it." So right there's another possibility of what just happened, that all of this was a effect of the anti-life equation just completely screwing with Scott's head and warping his world, like according to his actual father. And he says, "But not quite. You were not quite as strong as I, sadly. You could not make the choice I had to make," referencing giving away his son, to keep peace. And then his father puts his hand on him and says, "But my boy, let there be no shame in that failure. You tried. I know you tried, and I am forever proud of you." And Scott turns around, looks up at his father, and decks him right in the face and lays him on the ground and says, "F you," and just walks away. I mean, his father's kind of screaming at him like, "Can you hear me, boy? I'm your father. I am your God." Excuse me. Drink of water after all this talking. If you are interested in a 2-man ASMR episode, let us know. Tweet at us. Anyway, we get home, heating up hot dogs, letting the baby eat, and they're just having more talk about Jakey. He's only going to know life with his sister, and just more lively things. And then I believe here, one of the final glitch premonitions, ghosts, whatever you want to call them, whether they're real or not, shows up, and it is what's his name? The OG
Oberon.
Yeah, Oberon. He's the OG Mr. Miracle. So it's the guy we saw from issue 2 or 3, maybe even 1. It might have been 1. I can't remember. The guy, they were in there, like, he's smoking a cigar, old, kind of overweight old man. And Scott says, "Those will kill you." Oberon's like, what are you going to do?" And he's like, you could quit, exercise, live longer. Those are things you could do. And depending on how you're portraying this thing, this is the first time we've had a ton of dialogue with Scott talking to one of those. Maybe he's talking to himself. Like, you could quit, you could exercise, you could live longer. Those are things you could do. And he's like, what do I need more life for? I had a good life. I saved the world, made people clap, saw you married to the best girl. Again, could be talking to himself. And he says, I'm fantastic. I also don't think this is a one-for-one lookalike in my mind, but I get a little bit of Jack Kirby vibes from him right here. Maybe that's just me. Anyway, Oberon's like, Scott, pal, how are you? And Scott gets down on one knee and he says, I'm sorry. And then he hugs Oberon and he starts crying. And he says, I think I did everything wrong. I should have escaped. I shouldn't have escaped. Oberon, everything is wrong. And Oberon hugs him back and says, okay, kiddo, come on, you're all right. Scott, listen, that other world Metron showed you, this is important, all those crises and continuities that never really make sense. This is where it gets really meta. Think about this from a human like us reading this. That world full of superheroes who always end up hunky-dory, you think that's more real than that wife of yours, that kids? Come on, sell me another one. You heard about the baby girl? And he's like, yeah, I heard. Put a big smile on that. It put a big smile on this craggy old face. Kid, all of this, it'll break your heart. You can't escape that. But if you're good, if you stay good, you'll know there's someone out there that'll help you put it all back together, which is a nice kind of like hug moment for the reader right there. So, final scene. Back on the couch with his wife, Big Bart, as we've seen in several of these issues. Bart is sitting on her phone like always. And I always love that there's the background of an old school Mr. Miracle comic behind all of these. Scott, who is foreshadowing the next project, I believe, that Mitch Gerads and Tom King with the t-shirt of Strange Adventures from Adam Strange. It's a nice little wink. He's talking to Barda. He says, something weird happened today. Right when we came home, I picked up Jake and I looked in his face and I saw this thing. It was like Jake wasn't looking just at me. He was looking past me, at my dad, looking at me, and Dad's dad looking, and his dad, and all the way back to the beginning. And I'm just not looking just at Jake either. I'm seeing his kid looking at him, and that kid's kid looking at that, and that kid's all the way forward to the end. And it just felt like we were nothing. Our look was just a look among a million looks, some of our million years, more than a million, endless, but with an ending. And I was scared, to be that small, deep down scared. I almost wanted to run away like it was a trap. He wanted to escape, as he does. And Bart is still on her phone, just kind of listening. Sorry, on her mother box. I love how they treat mother boxes like phones. It's funny.
Yeah.
Anyway, but then I thought, all those other people, they're not real anymore, or yet. They went or they're coming, but now they're not here now. And I'm here, and you're here. Jake's here, and even this new little girl, she's here. And then I wasn't scared, and I didn't have to run, and I just enjoyed it. Seeing all of it, all of us going back and forward, like looking into the face of God. And then Barda says, you want to watch something? And he's like, sure. And he's like, where's the remote? And they get this thing of like, oh, God, Funky told me Jake put the remote in the dishwasher yesterday, and Funky didn't notice, so it's ruined. I meant to run to the store, but with everything, I just couldn't. I'm sorry. And then Barda just says, dark side is. And then Scott says, yeah, I know, but we are too. Barda says, Scott free, Mr. Miracle, what is wrong with you? And Scott smiles and says, I can always escape. And Barda leans in to kiss him and says, can you? And then they kiss, and the comic ends, and at the very corner of the panel with them kissing, Scott's shirt starts to distort. And then the comic's over.
Yeah.
Boom. Ending. So, after I just word vomited an entire comic book on you, what is your interpretation of this? I don't think there's a wrong answer.
Well, I'm just going to say.
Yeah.
I didn't pick up 90% of that.
Really?
I understood. I got it. But for whatever reason, I was viewing everybody telling him something. I guess whenever I was reading it, maybe I was reading too fast and I didn't notice that some of what they said directly conflicted with each other.
Yeah, all of it.
I just read it as all coming from the same thing. like all basically telling him this isn't real.
Right.
In some random way. Like I didn't necessarily think of it as, I was just like, oh, so he really did die at the very beginning.
Right.
And that's the whole thing. And all of this is all various ways to interpret all of it. Not necessarily that those 6 or 7 different people were telling him drastically different realities.
Right.
I just somehow melted them all into one when I read it.
What's cool about this and what you just said is that you can be right. Yeah. And that still fit within the context of that, because this gets so meta to talk about. I mean, what Metron was showing him was literally a multiverse of comics being written. Mm-hmm. Like, and what you just said, like, did he die at the end? How many times have we asked the question about any superhero? Do superheroes really stay dead?
Yeah.
You know, it gets super meta. It gets about the character. The comic becomes about the comic and about comics and about what it means to have these stories as a distraction from the real world, because that's really what he had the entire time, right? Like this, the stuff that we're known for reading in comics is these big battles and these ultimate adventures. But then you got to come home and you got to put your baby to sleep and you got to go pick up some hot dogs and you got to go get some banners for a kid's birthday party.
Pick up a veggie tray.
You got to go get a veggie tray. And is that... I'm trying to think of how to word this. I read several reviews after this just to get other people's thoughts on this, and I feel even more like it wraps everything up in a cohesive manner. And I'll read some of those in a second. But, you know, on the flip side, he did have this entire life in Apocalypse and New Genesis and this war and this thing he was dealing with. And I feel like this issue, you know, also asks the question, is that any less of a life? You know, even though it's kind of representing the comic book, you know, just because it's asking if that's any less real, or if the whole thing is just kind of this thing that you have to deal with and enjoy, even if you're kind of not sure what parts of it. Anyway, I'm going to pull up this last little thing and read to you all again for hopefully the last time today. Where is it? That's not it. That's not it. That is, I have too many tabs open. Are you it? No. Sorry. Please hold. Are you it? Okay, yeah. So I really liked a lot of elements of what IGN's review of this comic. I actually put some notes. Okay, I'm just going to read some of this, and then I think I'll share these links with Drew, and he can link these down if you want to do the whole thing, so I don't just sit here and read to you for a podcast. So this was pulled from, I believe, the IGN one. I have 2 articles, but there's an IGN review of this, and this is just a blurb that I felt like summarized a lot of this. So, following the seismic events of issue 11, where Metron reveals the mysteries of the multiversity, reboots, rebirths, and the de facto mechanism behind the curtain of comic book continuity, what else can our hero do but slip back into the comforts of domestic mundanity and tranquility? It is his greatest escape yet, and by ending the series this way, King both embraces and sticks a gauntleted finger in the eye of that continuity by telling readers that if you can't determine what's real or what matters, then it's best to just take solace in the things that undeniably do. Yeah, it is. I think if you don't give yourself an opportunity to consider everything that happened, and honestly, I think this issue and this whole series warrants, by the nature of it existing, going out and finding other opinions, because I don't think there's one answer. And I do think that there is a skill to be had in leaving elements of a story open-ended for interpretation. And I think one of the coolest aspects of that is that there can be multiple, and that those can be fused and discussed amongst others that read the book. So first off, if you're listening to this, I hope that you give yourself a chance to do that, to research and try to understand it and give this another read and go back with the knowledge that you now have and read some of the previous issues, and then also that you seek out some other interpretations of it, because it really is a cool way end this story, I think. Do you have any closing thoughts on this? I mean, I feel like I could dangerously talk for a long time about this.
That's right. No, I mean, early on, you finished reading it before I did.
Yeah.
And you were like, yeah, I think we need to finish this on the show because of the ending.
Yeah.
So I knew that something was coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, like, it did kind of have that, it was all a dream ending.
Right.
But the dream didn't stop.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like everything I read was for nothing.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah, all of this could have been a dream. But as far as we know, this incarnation of Scott Free is still living the dream. So,
right.
Wait, did they say that at some point? You're living the dream?
Mm-hmm.
So, like...
Well, that's just it. They hit you so hard with legitimate possibilities, and they never tell you which one to take home.
So, I mean, it didn't feel as angry. I didn't feel angry like I do sometimes at the it was all a dream ending type thing. This, because it wasn't like, yeah, I woke up and none of it even happened. It all happened as far as he's concerned. So, yeah.
Yeah, it kind of plays a little bit like I'm reminded of just like flavors of the Matrix and the ignorance is bliss and just what is real. That's the famous Morpheus quote from that movie, right? What is real? You know, can you feel it, taste it, touch it, whatever. The whole thing might have been real, and what I think is especially cool is Scott doesn't even know. Mm-hmm. But he knows he does love his wife, and he knows he loves his kids and Oberon and all the other things that he does love, despite the madness that he deals with and the trauma and the mental health issues that this comic obviously, you know, deals with. And that's a cool message that I don't get out of a lot of comic books. I don't stop to think after doing truly hours at this point of analyzing a comic book and think like, you know, that's a good message. Like, if you can put the parallels of this story and parallel them with your own life, like, you know, there might be some uncertainties of varying degrees in your life, but it is still important to acknowledge that sometimes that doesn't matter, and life is good enough just to be around people you love. And that might come across as cheesy for some of you, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. But that really struck a chord with me because I don't think many comics go far enough out of their way to give you feelings like that necessarily beyond that was cool or that was epic. And this one didn't strive for those notes at all, and in fact was singing a pretty different tune, I think, at the end of it. That's it for me. I'm winded after that episode. Anything else?
No, I mean, it was a lot. And I think it's hard to just wrap it up and be like, well, this is what I thought, because there's so many ways to take it. So, but it was good. It does, if nothing else, it makes me want to see what sort of things, and it's funny because I think this ends right about the time, a year point, like in our world, where I started picking up the Superman books. So, like, because they had at the beginning of the last issue, they had a preview of the upcoming Superman run that I just got done, that I'm working on. So I'm going to go back. I have a feeling I'll eventually all right, let's pick up from 2018 with Batman and see what's going on. Right. And maybe eventually I'll see if there's any repercussions from this. Yeah. Maybe not exactly him, but maybe Metron shows up. Yeah. Since I feel like Metron's like a multiverse traveler based. I know so nothing, too. Just like the feeling of it. So maybe some King the Conqueror vibes. Yeah. Maybe I'll see what's going on. In the ripples it causes. And maybe you won't. I feel like that was another question. Yeah. Like maybe nothing. He just kind of acknowledged rebirths and crises that we know DC has been like, all right, start over from the top again. And we don't know where Scott Free is in the mix of all that, which is another cool aspect. Maybe he was alluding to the impending omniverse. Yeah. Like all of it can be real and none of it is real at the same time. Right. Yeah. And that's cool to me. Yeah. But I can see why others might be like, next issue, next comic. Yeah. Cool. We got some trivia to finish up for this round. Do you have a faster than? Yes. I just came up with it the moment you said it. Yeah. All right. We're going to move right on to our final Mr. Miracle lightning round trivia where the questions are faster than the snap of a carrot.
It's perfect.
Yes.
I love it.
All right.
Should I go first?
I think I need you to go first because mine has potentially
cool
8 points.
Yeah. So I pulled one right out of your hat. I just need you to tell me the year that Mr. Miracle #1 came out by Jack Kirby.
I'm not going to think about it very much, and I'm actually, this is just kind of a guess, but it's also, I know this, but I don't.
You might have looked it up.
No, I'm sure I did. But the number that I was going to say doesn't match that. So I'm going to go with just sheer gut and say 1971.
That is correct.
Really?
Yeah. April of 1971.
Because I was going to say 77 for some reason, because I feel like I remember Torrance saying something like that. But then you said it, and I was like, wait, no, New Gods. Like, they would have all come in a package. I feel like it was earlier than 77. Maybe something that looks like a 7 in my mind's eye. So 71.
Very good. So 4-1.
All right. Well, hey.
Yeah.
I am going to give you the opportunity to get it.
I appreciate it.
Now,
a Hail Mary, though, because we'll see what happens.
I need to double check something real quick. Because I have to give you the chance to, and I'm curious to see if I need to take one of them out of the runnings. Okay, I'm going to leave it in there.
Okay.
So, according to my I go to it all the time whenever I'm gurgling things. CBR.com,
of course,
has a list of 10 powers that Darkseid has.
Ooh.
Some of them are wild. I didn't know. Some of them are kind of like obvious.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's him punching Thanos. That's funny. Anyway, so I'm gonna let you name superpowers until you get one wrong.
Okay.
So you could walk away with 11 points and just destroy my 4, or
Yeah, but one wrong is fair.
One wrong is
it's dead.
Okay. There's one obvious one.
Yeah. So the Omega beams.
Yeah, I almost took that one off.
Yeah.
But I was just like, well, some of these other ones are pretty obvious, but it's fine. So 2 to 4.
Super strength.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. Do I have to get the wording? Yeah. Okay.
3 to 4.
I feel like there's some that he might have. Invulnerability.
I think that's what they have listed as number 10. So you're tied with me now.
Okay.
Now the question is, can you beat me, and then can you stomp me into the ground like Darkseid?
Let's see. Darkseid's powers. I'm gonna guess he has some sort of healing factor. Or maybe I'm done there.
It doesn't say that. I'm still looking. Still looking.
I'm sure if people are listening and they're Darkseid know-it-alls, they're like, you idiot.
Yeah, and if you are, join our Discord
and let us know about it. Yeah.
No, I don't. Not quite.
All right. Hey, if he doesn't have it, he doesn't have it.
It's not on this list, so
okay.
I'm going to read them. And if you want to rebut me,
I doubt I will.
Then I would say that you won.
Yeah.
You just don't get to stop me. So, number 1, Omega beams.
I'm just going to say for the record, I was about to say flight instead of, because I don't know if he flies at all.
That's not even on here.
Interesting. See, I didn't know because I've never seen him fly.
Actually, let me go from number 10. Build up. So, according to this, number 10, invulnerability.
Got that one.
You said that one. Number 9, strength. You got that. That's the one where he was punching Thanos.
Nice.
Some fan art. Number 8. This is where I was curious, but it doesn't specifically say it. Longevity. It says,
I wouldn't say that is a healing factor.
Although seemingly immortal, Darkseid can die.
Right.
So
yeah, I don't think that counts.
For one instance, he was killed by his son Orion and almost murdered by the creature Doomsday. Number 7, super speed, though he rarely uses it.
Interesting. Would not have guessed that.
This one's wild. 6, size alteration.
Oh.
Yeah. So make himself huge, make himself tiny. I don't know.
Yeah.
This one I didn't know. It seems like he should have used it a little bit. Telekinesis.
Oh, wow.
So, and then
Interesting.
and then telepathy. I'm thinking.
I should have guessed that one because I assume that's how he was communicating with Desaad.
And then intellect. Darkseid's main weapon of choice is his vast intellect. So
that makes sense.
And then number 2, life force draining.
Wouldn't have guessed that.
So it says one of the more unique abilities, Darkseid can drain life force from anyone he chooses to help rejuvenate his powers. It doesn't say his being, like healing. And then number 1, the Omega Beams. So we tied.
I'll allow it.
Yeah. I mean, if Torrance were here, he would give us a tiebreaker.
Yeah.
But
actually, I like the meta-ness of we don't know who won.
Yeah.
Maybe healing factor was a thing.
Yeah.
And maybe you get extra points for knowing exactly what year Mr. Miracle came into being.
It wasn't the one I almost said.
Yeah.
It was because I sat there and thought for a minute.
Right.
So, yeah.
Cool, man. That was a fun series.
GG.
Yeah. We've covered now 2 Tom King, Mitch Gerads books. Who knows? Maybe one day we'll do Strange Adventures because that was a fun one too. And it's not even over yet. Issue 12 is about to come out.
Give some time for that.
Yeah, we'll let it marinate.
We've got an idea for what we might cover next. I'm not going to mention it now in case it's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if you want to know before we release it, join the Discord. Like I've mentioned multiple times, we give little show announcements sometimes when we think about it, like, hey, Monday's episode, we're going to start covering this. So if you want to be able to listen right away, now's your chance to go give it a read. So
yeah.
Also, seems like we're organically pivoting to the end game here. We also have if you read this and you like it and you have a completely different thought for how it ended, or if you think the Darkseid does have healing powers, give us a call and read us the Riot Act at 66 2-Man Fan 8, or find us on Twitter, 2-Man Comic Book with the number 2, Instagram, Facebook, 2-Man Comic Book Club with the number 2. I feel like that's it for now.
Yeah.
Alex, where can they find you?
You can find me at Alex Wayne Miller. Wayne is Wayne, just like Bruce Wayne, because I am Batman.
Or Robin.
Or Robin.
That's your birthday party.
We'll see what happens. 32 is a wild age, I hear.
You can find me at Drew Morris Comp on Twitter, Drew Morris Composer elsewhere, or buy my album on Bandcamp at drewmorrismusic.bandcamp.com.
Buy his album. That's it. Leave a review. Do all the things. Subscribe, like. We're going to get out of here because that was a beefy Mr. Miracle of an episode.
But I will say, if you're still listening and there's something you would like to hear us cover, reach out to us by one of the ways we mentioned. Let us know, because we don't really have a definite plan going forward. We'll figure one out. But if there's something you're dying to hear us cover, reach out, let us know.
Yeah. We'll see y'all next time. Darkseid is. Two-Man Comic Book Club podcast is hosted by Alex Miller and Drew Morris. Our graphic and logo work is done by Tessa Price, and our original compositions and theme music were composed by Drew Morris.